Hey everyone, today we're sitting in the quiet corner of your mind, the part that notices what words cannot explain. You're standing next to someone. They're smiling, laughing even. Nothing wrong is happening, but your chest feels tight. Your mood darkens, and without warning, you find yourself second-guessing your every word. And if you think you can control how others feel about you, then maybe that's exactly what you haven't let go of yet. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise. And let's begin today's journey together. You walk into a room and everything changes. Not the lighting, not the music, not the air conditioning, but something subtle shifts. The way your shoulders rise, how your thoughts start to fog the pressure behind your eyes. That's your body trying to warn you before your brain catches up. Some people don't throw punches, they just drain your soul. And evil doesn't always arrive with horns. Sometimes it wears a neat tie and compliments your shoes. You might notice it in a friend who always leaves you more anxious than you were before, or a coworker who makes every meeting feel like a courtroom. It's not that they say something cruel, it's that you feel smaller around them, quieter, more doubtful of yourself. It's the emotional version of walking into a room full of carbon monoxide. You won't see it, but if you stay long enough, it starts to kill parts of you. Philosophers still debate whether evil is a choice or a condition, but your nervous system doesn't wait for a verdict. It responds in real time. That tingling in your spine when someone smiles at you the way a snake uncoils, that's data. And you don't need a spreadsheet to believe it. There was a guy I used to work with, let's call him Steve. Steve never raised his voice, never missed a deadline, always asked, "How's your day going?" But after every conversation with him, I felt like I had just agreed to something I didn't understand. And by the end of that year, most of us were fighting about things we didn't even remember choosing. That's what emotional poison does. It doesn't yell, it spreads. The ancient Stoics especially, Epictetus, believed that freedom begins in the mind. But how do you protect your mind when someone is rewiring it under the radar? Simple. You start by paying attention to how you feel when you leave their presence. Not when you're with them because they might be good at covering up their intent, but afterward. Do you feel more whole or hollowed out? Do you feel seen or surveilled? That's the real test. There's a quirky pattern we all fall into. When someone makes us feel bad, we try harder to please them. It's like ordering the same bad coffee every day just because the barista scowled at you once and now you want to earn their smile. But you don't need their smile. You need your peace. And you can't find peace where someone thrives on your confusion. Have you ever noticed that some people only look relaxed when you're uncertain, that they only seem at ease when you're off balance? That's not just a personality quirk, that's emotional feeding, like a leech on your self-worth. And it's not always personal. Some people behave this way with everyone. Because they don't seek connection, they seek control. Sometimes your body knows before your heart does. You flinch. You breathe faster. You over-explain something that didn't need explaining. These are not just quirks of your social anxiety. These are alarm bells. Don't ignore them. A toxic person doesn't need to insult you to harm you. All they have to do is chip away at your internal compass, make you wonder if you're overreacting, make you believe you're the problem. And the worst part? You'll start to help them do it. You'll silence your own discomfort just to keep things normal. But normal shouldn't feel like walking on glass. This is where Stoicism comes back into play. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not the quality of your friendships, not the quality of your paycheck, just your thoughts." So, what happens when someone pollutes your thoughts every time they're near? You protect your inner peace like it's the last warm light in a dark forest. You leave early. You go silent. You stop explaining. You choose your environment like you'd choose a coat in winter based on what protects you, not what looks best to others. You don't need to expose them. You don't need revenge. You don't even need closure. You just need distance. There's a reason evil people rarely look evil. Because if they did, they'd lose access to you. The trick is in the illusion, the charm, the just joking insults, the innocent questions that carry hidden accusations. You don't have to argue. You don't have to convince anyone. You just have to stop standing in the storm and pretending it's weather you can handle. You ever buy a candle that smells good in the store but gives you a headache at home? That's how these people work. Their energy might not seem offensive at first, but spend enough time around it and you'll start losing sleep. So leave the room, decline the call, cancel the coffee. Peace doesn't always come from fixing the situation. Sometimes it comes from walking away before the poison gets too deep. There's a kind of smile that makes your gut tighten even as your face returns it. A kind of compliment that leaves you blinking in confusion like you missed a punchline. You know that moment you just thanked someone for their kindness, but 5 minutes later you're wondering if they were mocking you the whole time. Charm can be beautiful, but in the wrong hands it's chloroform. You walk into a conversation and they light up like you're their favorite person in the world. They lean in. Remember your favorite snack praise, something you didn't even think anyone noticed. It feels good, a little too good, like someone handing you a warm cup of tea right before they push you into a blizzard. Some people use charm not to connect, but to disarm. Because the easiest way to control someone isn't fear, it's comfort. If they can make you feel special, you'll lower your guard. If they can make you feel seen, they can get inside your head without a key. You once had a friend like that. You'd leave conversations with her glowing until you realized she said the exact same things to everyone. That she remembered details not because she cared, but because she cataloged people like a walking CRM. Every smile was strategic. Every compliment was currency. Philosophers still debate the role of intention versus behavior. But here's something less theoretical when someone's charm leaves you feeling small instead of safe. It's a trap, not a gift. There was a guy you dated once who was perfectly attentive. Always said the right thing, sent good morning texts, paid for dinner. But when you needed him, really needed him, he vanished. And suddenly you realized the charm wasn't about love. It was about ownership. You weren't his partner, you were his reflection. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But charming manipulators, they just borrow whatever color you need to see. They blend in shapeshift, become whoever earns your trust fastest. And once they have it, they start to shift your boundaries without you even realizing it. At first it's subtle. They might make little jokes about your friends. Raise an eyebrow when you mention a dream. Say things like, "You're too good for that anyway." Or, "That's cute, but let's be honest. You're better off here." You feel supported, but you're being redirected. Slowly, steadily. It's like being steered by someone with silk gloves. You don't feel the grip until it's too tight to escape. Remember the crocodile-scented sunscreen you accidentally bought last summer? The one that promised soothing botanical mist, but smelled like a reptile spa. That's what charm can be. A beautiful label. A horrifying aftertaste. The quirky thing is, real kindness is boring compared to manipulative charm. It's not dazzling. It doesn't make your heart race, but it lasts. It's the friend who brings soup when you're sick instead of heart emojis when you're glowing. It's the person who listens when you're rambling and doesn't turn the story back to themselves. And it's action, not polish. So how do you know when charm is a weapon? Watch what they do when they don't need anything from you. Are they still warm? Still present? Do they remember your name when the room is empty? Do they praise others when there's nothing to gain? Or does their attention fade the moment you're no longer useful? Charming manipulators often retreat like a tide once they've harvested what they came for. They might badmouth you, ghost you, or worse, replace you with someone else who still believes in the illusion. And yet, you miss them. That's the most dangerous part. You miss the performance. Because they played the role so well, your brain stored the memory as real. You'll replay their sweet moments like highlight reels, forgetting those moments were designed. Not spontaneous, not sincere. But Stoic philosophy reminds you truth does not need decoration. A real friend, a real lover, a real mentor, they don't need flattery to bind you to them. Their presence itself brings peace. Not confusion, not anxiety, not silence followed by overthinking. If someone's charm feels like a carnival, flashy lights, excitement noise, but always leaves you emotionally broke by the end of the night, it wasn't love. It was a lure. Step back. Test their kindness in silence, in honesty, in the mundane. And trust your body over their compliments. If you leave a conversation and need to lie down, that wasn't connection. That was emotional pickpocketing. Some people are not who they pretend to be, and some smiles are just masks with very sharp teeth underneath. There's a special kind of evil that doesn't steal your wallet, your job, or even your peace not right away. It steals your reality, quietly, patiently, until one day you find yourself asking, did that really happen? Or am I just crazy? Welcome to the kingdom of the well-crafted lie. It starts so small. A missed detail, a reworded story. No, that's not what I said, even though your memory feels crystal clear. At first, you brush it off. Everyone remembers things differently, right? But over time, these misalignments start to build, one on top of the other. And suddenly, you're not sure if you trust your own mind anymore. Imagine someone looking you in the eye and telling you that your pain didn't happen, that your truth is drama, that your questions are paranoia. This isn't just dishonesty, it's psychological demolition, and yet they do it with such conviction. They lie so smoothly, you start rehearsing your version of events before you speak, just in case you're the one who's mistaken. You start editing your words, avoiding confrontation and walking on eggshells, not because they scare you, but because their grip on your mind is slowly replacing your own. Philosophers still debate the nature of truth, whether it's absolute or constructed. But this kind of lie, it doesn't seek understanding. It seeks to dominate. It rewrites facts with intention. It's not a mistake, it's a strategy. One woman I knew, let's call her Jamie, could make you believe the sun was blue if she repeated it calmly enough. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her method was more elegant: deny, redirect, then accuse. If you challenged her, she'd sigh and say, I don't know why you're being so sensitive, as if your emotions were the problem, not her words. And the worst part, you end up apologizing. That's the power of deception that erodes reality. It doesn't just make you believe lies, it makes you doubt the truth you already knew. Marcus Aurelius once said, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. But to someone like Jamie, truth is clay meant to be molded, twisted, and repackaged as needed. You'll notice patterns. They never admit fault. They always have a justification. Their stories shift depending on the audience. They accuse you of remembering things wrong. And when they're caught, they pivot. They distract. They attack your character instead of addressing the facts. Remember that moment you found out your ex lied about something trivial, like where they were one night, but doubled down until you started apologizing for even asking? That wasn't a white lie. That was practice. A rehearsal for bigger ones. People like this don't lie because they need to. They lie because it keeps them in control. As long as you're confused, they're safe. As long as you're explaining yourself, they don't have to. It's like trying to win a board game where the other player keeps changing the rules mid-turn, then scolding you for not understanding them. Eventually, you start playing smaller, speaking less, avoiding the risk of being told you're overreacting or always so negative. And that's when they win. That's when they own you. But Stoic philosophy gives you a lifeline return to observable reality. What was actually said? What actually happened? How did you feel before they told you how to feel? If their words don't match their actions, trust the actions. If their story changes, but the facts don't trust the facts. If your gut tightens every time they speak, trust the signal. Because lies don't age well. They require upkeep, energy, performance, but truth. Truth just is. It doesn't need your belief to exist. Here's the quirky observation of the day: lying well is kind of like being a stage magician. The performance only works if the audience is too distracted to look closely. But once you start watching the hands instead of the sparkle, the trick falls apart. So stop focusing on their explanations. Focus on what's real. Look at patterns, not promises. Consistency, not charisma. And if you find yourself keeping a journal just to prove you're not crazy, that's not normal. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's you trying to survive gaslighting. Don't wait for a bigger betrayal to validate your instincts. If someone rewrites reality to stay in control of you, step out of their story entirely. Walk off the stage. You don't owe anyone your confusion. You owe yourself clarity. You owe yourself peace. And most of all, you owe yourself the right to believe what you saw with your own eyes. You're pouring your heart out. Maybe it's about something trivial like your dog being sick. Maybe it's deeper. Maybe you're falling apart a little, and they're nodding, smiling. Maybe they even say the right things. But their eyes cold, unmoved, not a flicker of real concern. That's the moment you realize they're not actually with you. They're just waiting for you to finish. This isn't just absence, it's calculated indifference. And if you've never felt the sting of that moment, you're lucky. Because when someone pretends to care while secretly detaching, it doesn't just feel like rejection, it feels like betrayal wrapped in courtesy. Seneca once wrote that human beings are social animals born not for themselves, but for each other. Empathy isn't just a virtue, it's the glue that keeps humanity from unraveling. So when someone consistently fails to show it, that's not a personality quirk. That's a warning. You've met these people. The ones who make your vulnerability feel inconvenient. The ones who deflect pain with a joke or worse one-up you like it's a contest. You say, "I've been feeling overwhelmed," and they say, "You think that's bad? Let me tell you about my week." You're not seen. You're not heard. You're dismissed with a smile and sent home with a heavier heart than you came in with. Empathy isn't loud. It doesn't wear a name tag or require a certificate. It shows up in the pauses, the quiet moments where someone doesn't try to fix you or shift the conversation or pull focus. They just sit with you in the storm. But an evil person? They can't do that. Not because they're busy, but because they don't want to. It's not that they don't understand your emotions. It's that they don't value them unless it benefits them. Philosophers still debate whether empathy is innate or learned. But either way, its absence leaves a very specific void. A conversation without it feels like talking into a mirror that's 2 degrees too cold. There was someone in your life, once a friend, maybe even a parent who mastered the art of saying the right words. "I'm here for you. You can always talk to me." But when you actually tried, they changed the subject. Or worse, made you feel guilty for needing support. That's not love. That's emotional fraud. And it has consequences. You start to hesitate before opening up. You learn to filter your pain. You say, "I'm fine," even when you're unraveling, because experience has taught you that some people just don't care, they collect. They collect your vulnerabilities like ammo. Store them in a vault. Use them later in arguments. Or worse, gossip. It's a quiet violence, and what makes it more confusing is that sometimes they fake it well. A hand on your shoulder, a soft, "That sucks." But their energy is wrong. You feel lonelier after the conversation than before. Real empathy doesn't drain you, it refills you. There's a quirky thing we humans do. We assume that if someone can cry during a sad movie, they must be capable of compassion. But crocodiles have tear ducts too. Doesn't mean they won't eat you. Pay attention to patterns, not moments. How do they respond when you're not at your best? When you're low, messy, or unsure? Do they lean in or do they disappear until you're palatable again? And here's the kicker, some of them take pleasure in your low moments. Not overtly, but subtly. A slight smile, a glint of satisfaction. Because if you're down, you're less threatening. If you're hurting, you're easier to manage. These people don't just lack empathy, they exploit its absence. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That line hits different when you've spent years arguing with someone who pretends to be good. So what do? You stop begging for compassion from people who have none to give. You stop explaining your feelings to someone who responds with indifference. You stop trying to pull warmth from a furnace that's never been lit. Empathy isn't a bonus feature. It's the bare minimum for a safe connection. And if you find yourself consistently walking away from conversations feeling more alone, more confused, or more ashamed, you're not in a relationship. You're in a psychological chokehold. Walk away. Seek those who make you feel understood without trying to fix you. People who listen without checking their phone, who let silence breathe instead of filling it with awkward half-smiles. Because real empathy isn't about grand gestures, it's about presence. And some people will never give you that, not because you don't deserve it, but because they don't have it. You're sitting across from someone who says, "I'm just trying to help." But the help never feels like support. It feels like surveillance. Like every step you take is being measured, corrected, reapproved. It's the kind of help that makes you feel smaller, not safer. At first you think they care. You believe them. Why wouldn't you? They say all the right things. "I only want what's best for you." Trust me, I've been through this. But soon enough, every decision you make has to pass through them. Every win starts feeling like their idea, and every failure somehow still your fault. Control doesn't always show up with fists or threats. Sometimes it shows up in soft tones, comforting words, and subtle guilt trips. You feel bad saying no, even when you know it's the right thing to do. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." But how do you stay master of yourself when someone else keeps holding the pen while you're trying to write your own life? The worst part is how easily control can masquerade as love. You once had a partner who said that outfit's just not you with a smile. Another time, they suggested you pass on an opportunity for your own mental health. And slowly, you started deferring to them more and more. Not because you trusted them, but because you didn't trust yourself anymore. And they liked it that way. People who hunger for control don't always scream. Sometimes they whisper just loud enough to change your mind. Philosophers still debate where the boundary is between influence and control. But in real life, the difference is simple. Influence lifts you up. Control locks you in. A healthy relationship empowers your autonomy. You feel more like yourself, not less. Your decisions are respected even when they differ. But when someone wraps their control in concern, what they're really saying is, "I don't trust you to lead your own life." And they frame it like it's love. You get, "Are you sure that's the best idea?" Or, "I just worry about you when you do that." Or, "You always get overwhelmed when you take on too much. Let me handle it." Sounds sweet, right? Until you realize you're no longer deciding anything for yourself. Until you hesitate before making a choice, not because you're confused, but because you're afraid of disappointing them. It's not love, it's quiet domination. There was a quirky moment once you wanted to try pottery. Just a small thing, a Saturday class, nothing big. But they laughed. You pottery, that's not your thing, and somehow you believed them. Months passed, you never tried. And that version of you, hands in clay, smiling in quiet concentration, never got born. That's how control works. It doesn't break your life all at once. It erases the versions of you that might have existed. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But if someone's voice is in your head all the time, making you question your worth, your judgment, your gut, you've already handed them your mind. And the longer they have it, the harder it is to reclaim. You might start apologizing for wanting space, or defending your opinions like they're offenses, or needing permission for things you never used to second guess. Control doesn't need walls. It builds itself in your self-doubt, and it's often rewarded. People like this get praised for being protective, wise, caring. But that's the trick. They've built a persona of concern so believable that even you start doubting your discomfort. But discomfort is a message. It says something here is not safe. Real help asks, "What do you want?" Real care says, "I trust you to decide." Real love supports your freedom, not your fear. And if you've spent time around someone who always knows what's best for you but never stops to ask what you think, you're not in a relationship. You're in a low-level dictatorship. The solution isn't loud rebellion. It's quiet defiance. Start saying, "I'm good, thanks." Start making small choices without consultation. Start trusting your own inner compass, even if it shakes a little. Because at the end of the day, autonomy isn't selfish. It's sacred. And no one who truly cares about you will ever try to take it away. Especially not with a smile on their face. You're not sure how it happens, but every time something goes wrong, somehow it lands in your lap. Even when it's clearly not your fault. Even when you did everything right. You start the day fine, confident even, and end it wondering if maybe you are the problem. That's not accountability. That's deflection dressed as logic. It starts with subtle suggestions. "Well, maybe if you just, I thought you said you were going to. You always seem to." Little phrases that crawl into your ears and nest in your self-esteem. Before long, you're carrying weight that isn't yours. Apologizing for things you didn't break. Fixing messes you didn't create. You didn't just trip, you were pushed. But you're too tangled in guilt to notice. Seneca once said, "People prefer belief to the exercise of judgment." And this is what blame shifters count on. That you'll believe their narrative before you examine it. That you'll doubt yourself before you ever question them. You once worked on a team with someone, let's call her Melanie, who had a gift for vanishing when things got messy. But when praise came around, She was always front and center, arms wide, smiling like a golden retriever at a family barbecue. When things went south, suddenly your name was on the list of mistakes. Even though you had receipts, screenshots, clear timelines, and still you doubted yourself. Because these people don't just blame, they're artists. They blend truth with distortion. They layer sweet words on top of backhanded critiques. I know you meant well, or you're really smart, it's just that. And there it is. The twist. The implication that you're not quite enough. They want you confused. Because confusion is fertile ground for control. Philosophers still debate the nature of guilt, whether it's a moral compass or a social construct. But when it's planted by someone else, nurtured by manipulation and harvested for power, it's not guilt. It's a weapon. You've felt this before. Maybe from a parent who always made you feel like their bad mood was your fault. Or a partner who said, "Look what you made me do after hurting you." It's not always explosive. Sometimes it's calm, even rational. That's what makes it so disorienting. They turn every criticism into a mirror. You look at them and somehow see your own flaws staring back. But Marcus Aurelius reminded us, if someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. For I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed. There's a difference between criticism that helps you grow and blame that makes you shrink. And here's the quirky part, people who constantly blame others rarely grow. Why would they? In their mind, they've done nothing wrong. They never feel discomfort, so they never change. Meanwhile, you're stuck doing all the work. Not just the task they dropped, but the emotional cleanup afterward. You're the one reflecting, apologizing, adapting, and slowly burning out. It's exhausting, and it's not noble to absorb someone else's accountability. It's self-betrayal. Here's the test. When you confront them with facts, real clear, documented facts, do they acknowledge it? Or do they pivot, minimize, get defensive, turn the spotlight back on you? That's not resolution, that's rerouting. And if every conversation feels like a courtroom where you're always on trial, it's not a relationship, it's a cycle. To break it, you don't need to win an argument. You just need to see the game. Start noticing patterns. Document them if you need to. Journal the events as they happen, not later when doubt clouds them. Clarity is your shield. And when they try to turn the tide again, stay calm, firm. Use phrases like, "That's not how it happened. I'm not responsible for that. Let's stick to the facts. They won't like it, but that's okay. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you." Because every time you absorb false blame, you chip away at your sense of self. Your confidence bleeds out slowly, and you become easier to shape. But once you stop playing the role they cast for you, their script falls apart. Blame is their tool. Accountability is yours. And there's strength in looking someone dead in the eye and saying, "That's not mine to carry." You stub your toe and wince in pain. And instead of concern, you hear laughter, a chuckle, a smug little grin. You brush it off. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe it was just a bad moment. But then it happens again and again. And suddenly you realize they're not just laughing at you. They like it when you fall. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it's wrapped in sarcasm, a friendly jab, a meme they send that hits too close to home. "Relax," they say. "I'm just joking." But there's something in the way they watch you struggle. Something gleeful, like a spectator who came for the wreckage, not the race. Epictetus once advised associate with people who are likely to improve you. But what about those who delight in watching you come undone? You might have had a friend like this. The kind who never celebrated your wins, but somehow always had front row seats to your failures. When you landed that job, they said, "Hope it's not another burnout trap." When you started dating someone, they smirked and said, "Let's see how long this one lasts." And the worst part, you laughed with them. Because if you didn't, it would have felt like weakness. Because pushing back would have made you too sensitive. Because deep down, you hoped they didn't really mean it. But they did. Philosophers still debate whether cruelty is born from fear or power. But the truth is, for some people, pain is a currency, and they get rich every time you withdraw from yourself. There's a strange kind of thrill in watching others stumble, especially when it makes you feel like the most stable person in the room. That's the dark joy of these emotional predators. They don't want to shine. They want to dim everyone else until they look bright by comparison. One woman I knew, let's call her Robin, always smiled when others cried. Not out of sadism exactly, More like smug relief. Like your pain made her feel justified, better, safer in her own misery. When a mutual friend lost her job, Robin's first words weren't, "How are you?" They were, "Wow." And she thought she was so smart. That's not just pettiness, that's rot. And if you've ever sat across from someone like that, someone who leans in a little closer when you're unraveling, you know the feeling. Your skin crawls. Your instincts whisper, "Get out." But you stay. You rationalize. You tell yourself, "Maybe I'm imagining it." You're not. That slight upward curve in their lips. That's confirmation, not confusion. The quirky thing about emotional sadists is they often pass as helpers, advisors, tough love specialists. But their version of love feels like a punchline you never agreed to. Real support doesn't kick you when you're down. It kneels beside you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That kind of joy. It doesn't come from another's suffering. It's inward, independent, whole. But malicious people, those who laugh at pain, can only feel tall when someone else is sinking. You know what it feels like when your success makes someone uncomfortable. The way their face tightens just slightly when you share good news. The way they change the subject. The way they find a flaw in your win before they ever say, "I'm proud of you." Their silence during your highs is louder than their laughter during your lows. And yet, they keep showing up in your life. Why? Because you keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. You keep hoping that this time they'll celebrate you. That this time the laugh will come with you, not at you. But that hope is a hook, and it keeps you stuck. So here's your mirror. If someone constantly makes you feel like the butt of the joke, if they flinch when you grow, if they get suspicious when you're finally happy, cut the cord. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it. Just leave the room. Let them sit alone with their smirk. Let them wonder why the air feels colder now that you're gone. You don't exist to be their punchline. You exist to rise. You've got people in your corner. Or at least you had people. Family, friends. A support system that kept you grounded. But slowly, piece by piece, you've drifted away from them. Not because of a falling out. Not because of distance. Just subtle nudges. Small suggestions. Quiet criticisms that made you question the very people who once made you feel whole. And the person whispering those doubts smiling the whole time. They say things like, "I just don't think your best friend really gets you." Or, "Your mom doesn't seem to support your growth." Or the classic, "You can't trust anyone these days, not like you can trust me." It feels like concern. It feels like care. But what it really is containment. Marcus Aurelius once said, "What injures the hive injures the bee." But malicious people, they want the bee outside the hive. They want you disconnected, uncertain, floating, because that's when you're most dependent. At first it feels like protection. You believe them when they say others don't understand you, that everyone else is either jealous, fake, or secretly working against you. And bit by bit your world shrinks. They isolate you in plain sight. You still see your friends, but not as often. You still talk to your family, but something always feels off afterward. And somehow they're always there to reinforce that discomfort. See, I told you. It's always like that with them. You're better off just focusing on us. Before you know it, your emotional lifeline runs through them. One person, one filter, one voice shaping how you interpret everything and everyone around you. It's not just isolation, it's monopolization. Philosophers still debate whether evil is intentional or unconscious. But anyone who tries to cut your roots while smiling about your growth isn't nurturing you. They're harvesting you. You might remember a friend like this, the one who didn't like your other friends, who always seemed a little threatened by your relationships. They'd pout when you made plans without them. They'd sulk when you didn't answer fast enough. And when you finally started pulling away, they called you the toxic one. It's twisted, isn't it? Because they don't want to be your only person out of love. They want it out of control. The quirky part. These people often present themselves as your safe space. They pride themselves on being the one person you can really talk to. They make you feel special, unique, understood. But their understanding has a price, and that price is everyone else. Your community, your clarity, your identity. It's like emotional feng shui. Every time they rearrange your relationships, the room gets lonelier. And the more isolated you become, the harder it is to see the pattern. You start believing you're the common denominator, that maybe you really are hard to love. Maybe the problem is you, but it's not. It's them. Because real love doesn't shrink your circle. It expands it. It helps you reconnect with the people who bring you peace, not tear them down in hushed tones. Marcus would remind you a man's worth is no greater than the worth of his ambitions. And if someone's greatest ambition is to be the center of your universe, they're not aiming for intimacy. They're aiming for ownership. To fight back, you don't need a confrontation. You need connection. Start texting the people you've drifted from. Schedule that lunch. Make that call. Return to the relationships that once made you feel alive before someone convinced you they were flawed. Because here's the truth, if someone genuinely loves you, they'll never ask you to love them instead of others. They'll want you to be surrounded, supported, seen by many, not just them. If you've ever felt the world narrowing around one person, if you've ever felt lonely in a room full of people because their voice has become louder than all the others, it's time to step back. It's time to rebuild your village. Because isolation wears many disguises, sometimes lipstick, sometimes concern, but always with the same purpose to make you easier to break. Don't let them succeed. You walk into the room feeling proud. You finally hit a goal you've been chasing for months. You're buzzing, and then they say it. That one sentence carefully sharpened, "Wow, you actually did it." I mean, I didn't think you'd follow through, but hey, good for you. And just like that, your joy feels smaller. It's not quite an insult, but it's definitely not support. It's the compliment that leaves a bruise. Seneca once said envy is the ulcer of the soul. And envious people, they don't always lash out in anger. Sometimes they offer praise, but it's the kind that wounds, the kind that's dipped in sugar and wrapped in barbed wire. You've probably encountered someone like this. A friend who always seems excited when you're struggling, but strangely quiet when you succeed. The one who frames every kind word as a subtle dig. That's a cute outfit, super brave of you to wear that color. Your presentation was good. I mean, not your best, but still. And here's the twist, you start craving their approval. Not because it feels good, but because it never fully arrives. They keep you reaching, doubting, adjusting yourself for applause that never lands. That's not friendship. That's emotional extortion. Philosophers still debate the origin of jealousy, whether it stems from lack or from comparison. But in day-to-day life, you can feel the difference. Someone who genuinely supports you leaves you feeling more whole. Someone who envies you, they leave you feeling like maybe your success was an accident. Their words always carry a shadow. And it's subtle. That's the sinister part. It's rarely aggressive. It's nice, polite. The kind of language that would sound harmless if repeated out loud. But the tone, the timing, the twitch of their smile, it tells the real story. They're not happy for you. They're just trying to make sure you're not too happy for yourself. There was a coworker I knew once, we'll call him Darren. Every time I landed a new opportunity, he'd say, "Well, don't screw it up this time." And he'd laugh. Every time. Same line, same smirk. At first, I thought it was a joke. But after the 10th time, I realized it wasn't about humor. It was about hierarchy. About making sure I never forgot who really belonged at the top. And here's the quirky truth, jealous people often act like they're looking out for you. I just don't want you to get your hopes up. I've seen people fail at that, it's brutal. They frame their fear as foresight. But really, it's a way to dim your ambition so theirs doesn't look so pale in comparison. That's not love. That's erosion. Marcus Aurelius reminds us the opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. And when someone's opinion is rooted in envy, it doesn't reflect your worth, it reflects their fear. You don't have to prove anything to someone who resents your light. And don't bother waiting for their full approval. It's never coming. Not because you're not enough, but because they can't tolerate feeling less than. Your success is a mirror they can't look into. So they throw shade. Not to hurt you, but to hide from themselves. Protect yourself by listening for tone, not just words. Pay attention to how you feel after they speak. If you walk away second-guessing your joy, your outfit, your choices, that wasn't support. That was sabotage disguised as sincerity. It's okay to outgrow people who can't clap when you win. It's okay to walk away from the table when the conversation tastes like passive aggression. And it's more than okay to surround yourself with people who say, I see you. I'm proud of you. Keep going. Because here's the truth, your light doesn't make others small. It just reveals who was never ready to shine beside you. So don't dim yourself. Not for politeness, not for comfort, not for envy wrapped in a compliment. Let them squint. Let them shade their eyes. You weren't born to be acceptable. You were born to be brilliant. You've forgiven them again and again and again. They hurt you, then act like nothing happened. You bring it up and they shrug. Maybe they even flip it. Why are you still talking about that? Or worse, you're so dramatic. And in that moment, it hits you. Not only are they not sorry, they never were. You've been waiting for remorse from someone who doesn't believe they've done anything wrong. That's not conflict, that's a closed door. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." But what happens when you're face to face with someone who doesn't just avoid being good? They actively reject the idea that they could be wrong. There's a particular chill to someone who hurts others and feels no discomfort, no second guessing, no desire to reflect. They make you feel like the villain for simply feeling pain, and they wear their indifference like armor. They don't apologize, they defend, they don't listen, they deflect, they don't change, they justify. You start to realize their version of self-awareness is a smokescreen. They say things like, "I'm just being honest," when they're being cruel, or "That's just how I am," as if personality is a prison sentence. But here's the kicker, they know what they're doing. They just don't care. They've built a fortress out of excuses. I had a tough childhood. I've always been misunderstood. Everyone turns on me eventually. And the moment you try to hold them accountable, they hide behind that wall, pointing at your emotions like evidence in a trial. Philosophers still debate whether evil is rooted in ignorance or intention. But willful ignorance, the kind that refuses to grow, refuses to look inward, refuses to apologize, is its own form of cruelty. You once dated someone like this. Maybe you still do. Every conversation about boundaries turned into an interrogation. Every time you said "that hurt me," they made it about them, about how they were being attacked. And somehow you ended up apologizing. Again. It's exhausting to love someone who never admits fault. It's lonely to stay loyal to someone who weaponizes your forgiveness. And it's dangerous to expect growth from someone who treats introspection like weakness. Marcus also said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But these people, their soul is dyed in denial, and it stains everything they touch. Here's a quirky metaphor. It's like trying to repaint a wall that's still dripping wet with damage. No matter how many coats you apply, the rot underneath keeps seeping through, because change can't happen without ownership. And ownership requires humility. They don't feel shame because they've trained themselves not to. To them, admitting wrongdoing is a loss, an exposure, a vulnerability they can't afford. So they project instead. They accuse you of being sensitive, dramatic, needy. Anything to avoid looking inward. And yet you keep hoping they'll wake up, hoping your pain will finally register, hoping this time they'll mean it when they say sorry. But they don't. Not because you're unworthy of apology, not because your pain isn't real, but because they've decided they don't need to change. That's not love, that's control. And if you stay, your silence becomes part of their story. Your endurance becomes evidence that what they're doing is okay. And your kindness becomes fuel for their next justification. So stop explaining, stop pleading, stop bleeding emotionally for someone who never brings a bandage. You don't need an apology to heal, you need distance. Healing begins when you realize that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. Some people belong in the rear view, with the volume turned down, because remorse is the root of redemption. And without it, all you're doing is recycling your pain. You're not here to be someone's emotional mirror reflecting back the version of themselves they refuse to confront. You're here to grow, to evolve, to love in ways that include yourself. So let go of the hope that they'll become someone better. Become someone better by letting go. Take a deep breath. Let everything you've heard today settle like dust after a storm. This isn't about paranoia. It's about peace, about protecting the light inside you from people who only come close enough to dim it. Maybe someone came to mind during this video. Maybe more than one. And maybe you've been waiting for some sign, some confirmation that what you felt in your gut all along wasn't just in your head. This is that sign. You are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You are not difficult to love. You are simply learning to see the difference between people who care and people who control. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start reclaiming your time, your choices, your voice. You stop giving explanations to people who only listen to respond. You stop editing your joy to make others comfortable. And most of all, you stop mistaking pain for connection. Because the truth is, evil rarely shows up in obvious ways. It smiles. It flatters. It pretends to care. But you are wiser now. Stoicism taught you to trust your observations, to protect your peace, and to value your mind as sacred ground. So protect it, keep it clear, keep it kind. And the next time someone's energy feels like a weapon, don't wait for proof. Just step away. That's all for now. The rest is yours to feel. End of script. Have a beautiful day.